Zoroastrianism, the religion of the good life. Rustom Masani. Chapter 4, Consecration Ceremonies. Consecration of the sacred fire and fire temples. There are 3 grades of sacred fires: the Atas Behram, the Atas Adaran, and the Atas Dadgah. These 3 have their different rituals of consecration and also different rituals for the daily prayers during the 5 periods, gahs, of the day, where they are fed with fresh fuel. The various procedures for the consecration of the sacred fire of the Atas Behram are: collection of the 16 varieties of fire, their purification, their consecration, their unification into one sacred fire, the consecration of the united sacred fire, consecration of the chamber of the fire, the sanctum sanctorum of the fire temple, enthroning the sacred fire. Significance of the processes. What does the fire thus collected, purified, consecrated, and enthroned signify? Surely originally they must have just had a fire and that would have been it. A Zoroastrian standing before the sacred fire thinks for himself, when this fire on this vase, when this fire on this vase before me, though pure in itself, though the noblest of the creations of God, and though the best symbol of the divinity, had to undergo certain processes of purification, had to have its essence, nay, its quintessence of purity, drawn out to render itself worthy of occupying this exalted position, how much more necessary, more essential, and more important is it for me, a poor mortal prone to commit sins and crimes and to be contaminated with hundreds of evils, both physical and moral, to undergo the process of purity and piety by making my Manashni, Gavashni, and Kunashni, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, pass, as it were, through the sieve of piety, and separating by the means of my Humata, Hukta, and Havarshta, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, from my Dushmata, Duzukta, and Duzvarshta, bad thoughts, bad words, and bad deeds, so that I may deserve an exalted position in the next world. I'm thinking of how in Surah 24 of the Quran, the purity of light, this kind of lays some flavor on that, doesn't it? The different varieties of fire are collected from the houses and places of business of men at different grades of society. They include even fire used in cremation or incineration, and the ceremony reminds a Zoroastrian that just as all the fires from the houses of men of different status have, by the processes of purification, acquired without any discrimination the exalted place in the vase, so also before God, men of all strata of society are equal, provided they can pass through the process of purification and preserve purity of thought, purity of speech, and purity of action. And also remember the first parables in Al-Quran found in Surah 2, Al-Baqarah, are parables that deal with light and sound. When a Parsi goes before the sacred fire, the officiating priest holds before him in a ladle in his hand the ash of a part of the burning fire. The devotee applies it to his forehead, just as a Christian applies the consecrated water, and thinks to himself, "Dust to dust, the fire all brilliant, shining and resplendent, hath spread the fragrance of the sweet-smelling sandalwood and frankincense round about it, but it is at last reduced to dust. So it is destined for me. Let me, like this fire, do my best to spread before my death the fragrance of beneficence and the light of righteousness and knowledge." Feeding the sacred fire. The ceremony of feeding the sacred fire in a fire temple 5 times, during the day, varies according to the grades of the sacred fire. In the case of the fire of the first grade, the priest must be one who has gone through the Berashnum and has performed the Kub ceremony. After saying his prayers, he places some frankincense and 6 pieces of sandalwood over the fire in the form of a maki, or throne. He goes round the censer with a metallic ladle in his hand, and standing in 8 different positions, the 4 sides and 4 corners, recites different parts of a prayer, the substance of which is as follows. O God, we praise thee through thy fire. We praise thee by the offering of good thoughts. We praise thee through thy fire. We praise thee by the offering of good deeds. For the illumination of our thoughts, for the illumination of our words, and for the illumination of our deeds. Now, that sort of defines Luciferianism, doesn't it? That it's brought forth in our own lives. We're not. But think of my color scheme of green, yellow, white, red, blue, orange, black, purple, and of course, the Zoroastrian New Year starting up with green again. Whilst uttering the words Dushmata, Duzukta, Duzvarshta, evil thoughts, evil words, and evil deeds, during the recital of the first Nyash and the first Pazand portion thereof, the officiating priest rings thrice the bell within the holy precincts of the altar of fire. Some priests ring the bell thrice, while uttering each word to emphasize that portion of the prayer in which the worshipper expresses his determination to shun bad thoughts, bad words, and bad deeds. The ceremonies for the consecration of the sacred fires of the 2nd and 3rd grades are similar, but simpler, and the number of different fires required for the purpose is smaller. The Boa ceremony for feeding the fires is also simpler. The temples or buildings which hold the sacred fires are consecrated with the recital of Yasna, Vendadad, Afringan, and Baj prayers for 4 days. Well, of course, it's really us that is sanctified, but consecration of the Towers of Silence. In the center of the spot chosen for the tower, a priest performs the Baj ceremonies in honor of Sraasha, the guardian spirit guiding the souls of the dead, of Ahura Mazda, of Spenta Armaiti, the Amesha Spend, presiding over the land, of Arda Fravash, i.e., the departed souls, and of Haft Amesha Spend, the 7 beneficent immortals. A few days later, 2 priests perform, in the morning, the Tana ceremony for laying the foundation of the tower. The ceremony is so called as a very fine thread, Tana, is used to make out the circumference of the tower at its different parts for laying the foundation. 101 fine threads are woven into one strong thread or string. The thread so prepared is required to be long enough to go thrice round the circumference and the inner parts. Some time before its use, the thread is made pav, i.e. washed, purified, and dried. To hold this thread, the priest have to drive in the ground 301 nails of different sizes and weights. Think of this as symbolic of Tantra. In the central well, the tower, called Bandar, 2 priests perform for 3 consecutive days the yasna and the Vendidad ceremonies in honor of the Yazata Sraasha, who protects the souls of the dead for 3 days and nights after death. On the morning of the 4th day, the opening day of the tower, a yasna ceremony is performed in honor of Ahura Mazda. Then the Bhaj and Afragan ceremonies are performed in honor of Ahura Mazda of Arda Fravash, i.e. the departed souls of Spendarmad, i.e. the archangel presiding over Mother Earth, a portion of which is now occupied for laying out the dead, and of Sraasha in the Afragan ceremony, known as the Jasan ceremony, which is performed in the presence of a large number of the company assembled to witness it. The name of the donor at whose expense the tower is built is mentioned, and the blessing of God is invoked upon him. When the ceremony is over, the Parsis assembled throw into the central well of the tower gold, silver, or copper coins, or even rings or other ornaments, which help to make up the sum necessary for building the tower, if it is built at the expense of the community. If, however, it is endowed by a donor, the amount thus collected goes to the head priest of the district in whose ecclesiastical jurisdiction the tower lies. Sometimes he donates it to charitable trusts of the town. And certainly a funeral, a burial place or a processing place for the dead bodies is certainly a very important thing for a spiritual community to take part in. Don't let the secularists or the people of other faiths be in charge of what happens to you. Of course, when you're dead, what's done with your body, that's, not against you, not for you, and it's not a sign, oh, well, his leg kind of twisted this way and the other way, and trying to figure out if a person's good or evil based on that is something I'm dismissive of. Well, people believe what they want, but I don't see any credence to that.